There comes a time in every soul's journey when the veil between the physical and the eternal begins to thin. Death is not an end but a continuation, a passage through the door of divine remembrance. The signs of this nearing transition are not meant to frighten us, they are sacred invitations to awaken, to reconcile, and to return home in peace. The first sign is detachment from the material world. What once held importance begins to fade, wealth, possessions, and achievements lose their luster. The soul begins to remember that it came into this world with nothing and will leave the same way, carrying only the weight of its love, compassion, and wisdom. The second sign is a deep sense of completion. There's a quiet knowing that what needed to be lived has been lived. This doesn't come from regret or fear, but from surrender, the realization that one's purpose has unfolded exactly as it was meant to. The spirit starts to release its grip on unfinished desires, trusting that all is well. The third sign is heightened perception and spiritual awareness. Dreams grow vivid, visions appear in stillness, and unseen presences offer comfort. It is as though the walls between dimensions become porous, and the soul begins to glimpse the light that has guided it all along. The fourth sign is forgiveness and reconciliation. The nearing of death calls the heart to cleanse itself of bitterness. Old wounds seek closure. Love asks to be spoken aloud. It is the soul's final purification, the release of all that binds it to earthly pain. The fifth sign is an overwhelming sense of peace. Fear of the unknown gives way to serenity. The dying one no longer resists but flows, like a river returning to the ocean. The body may grow weak, but the spirit shines brighter than ever, preparing to merge with the divine source from which it came. Death, then, is not darkness. It is awakening. It is the great remembering of who we truly are, eternal consciousness wrapped temporarily in flesh. When we prepare our souls not in fear but in reverence, we discover that dying is merely the final act of living, the soul's homecoming to love itself. Detachment from the material world is not a rejection of life, but rather a sacred shift in awareness that unfolds naturally as the soul prepares to cross the threshold between the physical and the eternal. When death approaches, the soul begins to withdraw its attention from the illusions that once seemed so vital: possessions, titles, ambitions, and appearances. The weight of the world that once anchored a person in endless striving begins to lift, and in its place comes a deep sense of clarity. It is as though the spirit remembers that it was never defined by what it owned or achieved, but by the love it carried and the light it shared. This detachment often begins subtly. The individual may lose interest in things that once consumed their attention. Material comforts no longer hold meaning, and conversations about wealth or success feel distant, almost foreign. The soul starts to recognize that everything external is transient, that no matter how much is gathered, it cannot follow beyond the veil. The body, once the center of identity, is seen as a vessel, precious but temporary, designed only to serve the journey of spiritual awakening. As this awareness deepens, gratitude often takes the place of desire. The person no longer seeks to acquire but to appreciate. The smallest acts, a moment of sunlight, a gentle breeze, a shared smile, become profoundly beautiful. This quiet appreciation is the soul's way of saying farewell to the physical realm, not in sadness, but in reverence for the experience of being human. The detachment is not cold or emotionless, it is warm, accepting, and filled with peace. There is also a humbling realization that the pursuit of material things was never wrong, only incomplete. It served its purpose in teaching the soul about effort, creation, and attachment. Yet now the deeper truth emerges, that true wealth is not held in hands but in the heart. The spirit begins to see that all things are borrowed from the universe, the breath, the body, the relationships, and that to release them is to return them with gratitude. Detachment, therefore, becomes a sacred act of remembering that the essence of who we are has never been bound by the material, and in this remembering, the soul begins its graceful preparation for the journey beyond. A sense of completion arises when the soul begins to feel that its earthly purpose has reached its natural fulfillment. It is not a mental decision, but a deep, intuitive knowing that comes from within, a calm awareness that everything that was meant to unfold has done so. The person may look back on life and see both joy and sorrow with equal acceptance. The successes and failures, the moments of love and pain, are all recognized as threads woven into a single meaningful tapestry. There is no longer a desire to change the past or control the future. Instead, there is peace in what has been and trust in what is to come. This inner sense often comes quietly, like a whisper that says, "It is enough." The restless search for more begins to fade. The need to prove, to achieve, or to be recognized loosens its hold. The soul realizes that the purpose of living was never about accumulation or perfection, but about experience, growth, and understanding. Every challenge faced and every act of kindness offered has served a purpose in shaping the spirit's evolution. With this awareness, regret loses its power, for even mistakes are seen as sacred teachers on the journey toward awakening. As this feeling of completion deepens, relationships take on new meaning. The heart seeks connection not out of need, but out of gratitude. Words left unsaid are spoken with sincerity, and forgiveness flows easily, as the soul understands that nothing truly remains unfinished. All is reconciled through love. The person may feel drawn to spend more time in reflection, silence, or nature, sensing the stillness of eternity pressing gently against the edges of this world. There is also a profound surrender to divine timing. The fear of death softens because it no longer feels like a disruption but a continuation. The individual comes to see that their life, no matter how ordinary it may have seemed, has been part of a greater design, a small yet essential note in the vast symphony of existence. In this recognition, the soul feels whole. It does not seek to hold on, nor does it rush ahead. It simply rests in the quiet knowing that it has lived, learned, and loved as it was meant to, and that this completeness is the signal of a soul ready to journey home. As the soul draws nearer to its transition, a deep spiritual clarity begins to unfold, a light that seems to illuminate from within, revealing truths that once lay hidden beneath the noise of everyday life. The mind, once clouded by worries and distractions, begins to quiet, allowing the spirit to perceive reality through a higher lens. This clarity is not born of intellect, but of remembrance, a gentle awakening to the eternal nature of being. The individual starts to sense the presence of something greater, a divine order that threads through every experience, every breath, every moment of existence. Dreams often become vivid and symbolic, offering glimpses of what lies beyond the physical realm. People nearing the end of life may describe seeing loved ones who have already passed, radiant beings of light, or landscapes that seem more real than the world around them. These are not hallucinations, but reflections of the soul's expanding perception, the veil between dimensions growing thin. Time and space lose their rigidity, and what once seemed separate begins to merge into a seamless continuum of life, death, and rebirth. The spirit begins to see not endings, but transitions, not losses, but returns. This clarity also brings with it a deep compassion. Judgment fades as understanding grows. The person no longer views others as enemies or strangers, but as fellow travelers on the same journey toward awakening. Past grievances dissolve in the light of this awareness, for the soul recognizes that all experiences, even painful ones, were instruments of growth. There is a sense of divine forgiveness not only toward others but toward oneself, as the soul remembers its inherent innocence beneath the layers of human imperfection. Often this heightened awareness manifests as a profound peace. There is no need to analyze or explain, the person simply knows. They may speak of love that feels boundless, of unity with all creation, of a light that welcomes without condition. The material world begins to fade into softness, while the unseen world becomes vivid and real. This spiritual clarity is the soul's way of preparing for return, not with fear or confusion, but with wonder and trust. It is as though the spirit, long asleep in the dream of matter, has opened its eyes once more and recognized the divine home from which it came. As death approaches, the heart awakens to its deepest longing, the desire for forgiveness and love. This yearning does not come from guilt or fear, but from the soul's innate wisdom, which understands that love is the only energy that transcends death. When the end of physical life draws near, all illusions of separation begin to dissolve. The mind quiets and the heart speaks clearly. What truly matters is not what we have done or gained, but how deeply we have loved and how freely we can forgive. The soul instinctively seeks to clear any residue of resentment, shame, or regret, for these are the weights that prevent its full release into peace. In this sacred stage, many find themselves reflecting on relationships long forgotten, family members, friends, or even those who once caused pain. Memories surface not to torment but to heal. The person may feel compelled to reach out, to apologize, or to express gratitude. Words like, "I'm sorry," "I forgive you," and "I love you" carry a power far greater than at any other time, for they are spoken from the truth of the soul rather than the pride of the ego. Forgiveness, once seen as a moral act, becomes a spiritual necessity, a way to untie the final knots that bind the soul to earthly suffering. At the same time, love takes on a purer form. It is no longer conditional or dependent on circumstances. It becomes expansive and universal. The dying person often experiences moments of profound tenderness, tears not of sadness, but of recognition. They may feel surrounded by an unseen presence, a warmth that seems to embrace them from beyond. It is as though the universe itself whispers, "You are loved and you have always been loved." This realization dissolves fear and fills the heart with serenity. The desire for forgiveness and love is the soul's final act of purification, a sacred cleansing before its return to the divine. Through forgiving others and themselves, individuals align with the eternal truth that all beings are connected through love. In this state, the soul becomes light, free from the burdens of judgment and anger, ready to cross over not as a weary traveler, but as a radiant being returning home to the boundless love from which it came. As the soul nears its final moments in the physical world, a profound and unshakable peace begins to emerge, a stillness so deep that it seems to transcend all human understanding. This peace is not merely the absence of fear or pain, but a presence, a quiet awareness that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. The person begins to sense that there is no more struggle, no more need to control, no more resistance to what is. The mind, once restless and filled with questions, begins to soften, and the heart opens like a flower to the light of surrender. It is as though the soul, having wrestled through the lessons of life, has finally found rest in the knowing that it is safe, guided, and deeply held by something infinite. This peace often comes unexpectedly. It may arrive after a long period of suffering, worry, or uncertainty, washing over the individual like a gentle tide. Those around may notice a change, a softness in the eyes, a calmness in the voice, a quiet smile that needs no explanation. The person no longer clings to the past or anticipates the future. They exist in the pure simplicity of the present moment. The noise of the world fades into silence, and within that silence, there is a sacred recognition that life and death are not opposites but companions. This deep peace is the soul's way of saying, I am ready. It is not resignation but acceptance, an alignment with the divine rhythm of existence. The fear of the unknown dissolves as the individual begins to feel a connection to something far greater than the self. Even the body, though weakened, seems to carry a quiet dignity, as if it knows that its purpose is nearly complete. Many describe this stage as being wrapped in a light or warmth, a loving energy that seems to cradle them between worlds. In this state, all conflict disappears. There is no need to seek or escape, only to be. Time loses its meaning, and the boundaries of the self begin to dissolve into something vast and eternal. What remains is peace, pure, silent, radiant peace. The kind that cannot be shaken by pain, loss, or even death itself. It is the peace of the soul recognizing its true home, finally remembering that it has never been separate from the divine it is about to return to. And so, when death approaches, it is not a shadow to be feared, but a light to be welcomed. Each of these signs, detachment, completion, clarity, forgiveness, and peace, are not endings but awakenings. They remind us that the soul has always been eternal, merely wearing the garments of the body for a brief time. When we understand this, death becomes not a loss, but a sacred return, a homecoming to the love that never dies. To prepare for this journey is to live with awareness now, to forgive while there is still time, to love without hesitation, to let go of what does not matter, and to listen to the quiet guidance of the Spirit within. For the truth is, we do not wait until death to awaken, we awaken so that death no longer holds power over us. So when the moment comes, walk without fear. The path ahead is not darkness, but light. The same light that has guided you through every lifetime, waiting patiently to welcome you home.